Hello, welcome to ExplorinVictorian. I'm Josh Wilson, and today we are at Heritage Farm, Museum and Village in Huntington, West Virginia, and we're going to be talking about cornbread. Today we're going to do two different cornbread recipes. We're going to fry some cornbread in the skillet, and we're going to bake some cornbread in the Dutch oven. The cornbread that we're going to be baking today comes from the 1872 cookbook, California Recipes book. And we're going to go ahead and put that recipe on the screen for you right here. So if you want to pause it to take a look at that, we'll also have it down in the description for you. So I just got the stove going. I'm going to go ahead and set my skillet on top of the stove. I've still got the eye on top of the stove. I'm going to set that there to warm up. I'm going to take my Dutch oven and I'm just going to slide it underneath the stove. So that way my cast iron has a chance to warm up. I don't want to shock it. If my cast iron is the least little bit cold, I don't want to dump a bunch of hot coals on it when I'm ready to start cooking, because that can lead to warping the iron. It can even crack my Dutch oven or my skillet. So I'm just going to let these gently warm up while I prepare the next steps in our recipe. So we've put all of our dry ingredients in our mixing bowl, and I'm just going to take my wooden spoon, give these a stir. Now our recipe calls for 2 eggs. So we're going to go ahead. I like to pre-scramble my eggs before I put them in my batter. I like to crack them in a separate bowl. And lastly, our pint of cream. I'm going to go ahead and rinse out our bowl a little bit. Just stir this until you get a good batter. Make sure you scrape the bottom, get all those lumps up. Our Dutch oven, fairly warm to the touch. It's not cold anymore. Got a dollop of lard here. You could use butter. And I'm just going to smear this around in our Dutch oven. I get it started with the spoon, but then I'm going to go ahead and just do this by hand. Make sure you get up the sides of the walls. Get this coated real good. Once that's coated, we're going to go ahead and just pour our batter in. So we've got our batter poured into our greased Dutch oven. Let's take this over to the fire. So we're just going to peek into our stove. Yeah, we got some coals going in there. I'm going to go ahead get some out. I'm just going to set them here in the hearth. We're going to go ahead and set our Dutch oven on top of those. We're going to put our lid on there. Now I want to pay attention to my lid. I've got a number 10 here, and the handle is going horizontal. It's going to be important because I'm going to have to rotate that lid as these cook. So I'm going to get some coals, put some coals on top. Spread them around a little bit. Put some more wood into my stove. So we're going to have to keep these coals going. Now what's going to happen, I'm going to give this 5 to 7 minutes, and I'm going to rotate that lid 180. And then every 5 to 7 minutes, I'm going to keep rotating that lid. That way, if there's any hot spots on top of this lid, that heat is moving evenly around the cornbread so it'll bake evenly. And this way I don't get any scorched places or any places that are underdone. So we've had our coals on top of our Dutch oven for 5 minutes. I want to check for heat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 seconds is a comfortable time. That's all the time I can hold my hand over those coals. If I can get to 5 or 6, the coals are cooling off. I prefer about a 3 or a 4 second count before I have to move my hands. So those coals are still good. I'm going to take an S hook. I'm not going to lift the lid. I'm just going to rotate it. I'm more concerned about the heat on top than I am the heat under, but we're going to let this go another 5 to 7 minutes, and then we're going to check our coals again. We're going to check our coals underneath. We might rotate the whole Dutch oven to keep the heat going on bottom evenly. When we time this, here in the house, we can use a clock that might be in the house. I can use my pocket watch. Definitely if I'm on the trail doing this at a camp, I would use my pocket watch. Another option is if I have company, we might sing a song together, and at the end of the song, then we know it's been long enough to come and rotate that lid. We may choose to read a page or two from a book, and at the end of a measured amount of reading, we would know that it's time to come turn this to. So it's been another 5 minutes. I'm going to go ahead, move my Dutch oven, check my temperature. Still got a good 3 second count on there. We're going to rotate this 180 and set it back down. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're starting to cool off on the lid. So now what I need to do is rotate this lid again, 180 degrees. I'm going to add some more coals on top. One, 2, 3. Yep, that's a good temperature. So our cornbread has been baking for half an hour at this point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm holding my hand about 4 inches above those coals. I'm getting a 5-second count, but I'm also getting a whole lot of ash and debris. So at the half-hour point, I'm just going to lift my lid very gently, not to spill those inside there. I'm just going to dump this over a bucket, dump those off, and take a look at my cornbread. I can see it starting to bake. There's steam coming off of it. I don't want this lid off too long. I'm going to settle that lid back on there. I'm going to put some more coals on top. And now we'll come back and check on this in a bit. While our cornbread is baking in our Dutch oven, we're going to look at a different type of cornbread. In my bowl, I've got about a cup of cornmeal. And to that, I'm going to add about a teaspoon of salt. Some folks call these journey cakes. Some folks call these Johnny cakes. Hoe cakes is another term. Nobody's really sure about the etymology of this. And there's a ton of names for these. There's a ton of recipes for these. This is the most basic one. Some people put in different types of sweeteners, cane sugar, brown sugar. Some people add wheat flour to these. Just all kind of different variations. But this is the most basic. And if you're going to go out hiking, you can just mix this up ahead of time, put it in a bag in your pack, and you're ready to go. While we were getting our coals up to temperature, I had a pot of water that was boiling. And I'm just going to pour a little bit of water in here. Doesn't have to be a lot. We're going to scald this cornmeal. And it's just going to make a stiff batter. And I'm going to fry this up in a skillet over the stove. Sometimes you can take this paste and kind of slather it on a flat board and set the board in front of the fire and let it bake in front of the fire and then just peel it off of the board. So I just scalded that cornmeal. And now this is really important to remember. I need to let this set for just a second because that water is boiling. If I stick my hands in there and start shaping these, I'm going to burn myself. So it's been just a minute. Our batter has cooled down a little bit. I'm just going to scoop some out. Mold it like you would a snowball. You want it about the size of an egg. And then just kind of flatten it, push it together on the sides if you start getting cracks in it. You want it about a 1/2 inch thick or so, maybe 3/8. And you just want to make these little cakes. We're going to make several and set them here on our cutting board. If you find that you've still got some dry spots, you can add some more scalding water. Just remember to mix it, let it set for a second before you start touching it. Some people even like to use scalded milk to make these. So we've got our skillet here on top of the stove, our oil's good and hot in it, and we're just going to set our cakes right on in. And the secret to having these cakes turn out well is a good amount of oil in the bottom. And we're just going to let these set and cook. We don't want to turn these too soon. We just want to let them set and brown. So I'm going to go ahead, take my S hook, rotate our oven here. I'm just going to hold my hand a little bit above the coals, 2 or 3, 4 inches. 1, 2, 3. Ooh, yep. We're still good there. So I'm going to take my S hook, rotate that. We got a little bit of steam coming out from underneath the lid. We were real close to having baked this for right at an hour. At an hour, what I'm going to go ahead and do is dump those ashes off the lid again into my bucket, and then we're going to take the lid off and take a peek at that and see how it's doing inside at the hour mark. So our Johnny cakes have been in the skillet for about 7 minutes. I'm just going to flip these over. Yeah, we're starting to get a good golden brown color on the bottom there. So I'm just going to go ahead and flip all of these. And then we're going to cook that bottom side for about the same amount of time. So our bread has been baking for right at an hour. I'm going to go ahead and use my S hook to just pick this lid up very carefully. Don't want to dump the ashes and coals on our bread. Wow. We're starting to look good. We're getting a golden color on the top there. I don't know if you can see that on the camera. And I'm just going to take my fork, poke a fork in it, our fork comes out clean, that good golden color there. We might could let this go just another few minutes, but I think I'm going to go ahead and call this cornbread done. I'm going to leave the lid off. I'm going to go ahead and pick our Dutch oven up, move it off of our coals that were underneath it, just back here to the back of the oven. I'm going to let it cool so that I can handle it here in just a few minutes. And so now, while our cornbread in our Dutch oven is cooling in the back of the hearth, we've cooked these about 8 minutes on the other side. 7 or 8 minutes per side is good. And this works out well with doing the coals on the Dutch oven. So we're just going to kind of check that out. We've got a good golden crust. Sounds good. We're going to go ahead and lift these out. And these are ready to eat. So our cornbread has cooled a bit. As you can see, that good golden color we've got. It's pulled away from the edge of the pan. That's what we want to see. So what we're going to do is we're just going to lift this bread out of our pan. So there's our loaf of cornbread. Now let's see what we look like inside. Fluffy, moist, looks delicious, ready to eat. So now we've got our 2 types of cornbread. For our Johnny cake, we can go sweet or savory. I like to go a little sweet with it. I'm going to put some maple syrup here on my fork. Spread that around a little bit. And let's see how these taste. So our journey cake here, it's got a good crisp on it. And kind of cut into it with your fork a little bit. These are good lunch on the go, breakfast on the go. But it's cooked on the inside, got some syrup on it there. Now just salt and cornmeal, it definitely needs a topping. Molasses, maple syrup, something. And now in contrast, our baked cornbread, you can see the spongy texture. That's that baking soda in it. Puts those good air bubbles, makes it light and fluffy. You can see it just cuts very easy with the fork. Good texture for soaking up some hot butter in there. Good texture for putting in some soup or stew to soak up some of that good flavor. This recipe has an excellent balance of flavor. It's an excellent balance of cornmeal, an excellent balance of the flour. It's got some sugar in it. It's a little sweet. It's not overly sweet. I know there's a big debate about whether sugar goes in cornbread or not. But this is an excellent, excellent flavor. The sugar isn't overpowering. It's not like cake. It's just enough to let you know it's there. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If so, give us a like and a subscribe. Share it if you want your friends to see it. If you try any of these recipes, please leave us a comment down below and let us know how they turned out. And I'll see you next time on Explorin' Victorian.